Hello, friends and brothers. This is the Bouncing Around Podcast, home of great basketball takes, big coaching tips, and even bigger mics. Now, we're here to talk about some very important stuff, NBA-wide, of course. So, All-Star Snubs, Games of the Week. Stay tuned, and we'll get there whilst we bounce around. The jig is up. We figured out where the mistakes have been made for these all-star snubs. We know what the coaches did wrong, and we're here to correct it for our hypothetical world. Now, before we get into that, how are you doing, sir? Quite well, I assume?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. You look like you got a haircut. You look sharp.
I did not.
Looking sharp, and you've got such a strong jaw and cheekbones. You know what I mean? I don't. You can see my face is like round. Yours is like it's very muscular. Looks good.
It's pointed at the microphone.
Distinguished, I would say.
No. Well, thank you.
So, first things first, we're going to dive into it. All-star snubs, everybody loves to hear them. You do not get to say somebody's a snub unless you pick who they're taking off. Those are the terms, I think, and those are fair. Do you agree to these terms?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so move forward with that understanding. You have to take somebody off. Now, your Eastern Conference All-Star snub, how many do you have?
We can go back. Let's go one apiece, back and forth, and if I have, let's say, 8 extra, I'll just reel them all off. I don't, but if I did, that's how we do it. Oh, should I?
Oh,
me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So my first guy is I'm actually 50-50 on this because I'm such a big Vooch guy that Vooch has to stay on my roster just out of principle. I came out with a video. I wrote All-Star in there. I'm not going to take that down. So I know exactly how much he does. I know exactly how much Domantas Sabonis does as the snub replacement. So he's going to stay on. And then this is going to break the world because the Boston Celtics are a 500 team. I said this last time. For me, if you are talking Bam Adebayo, which most people are as an all-star snub, or Jimmy Butler, whoever, just a Miami Heat player, take the spot of a Boston Celtic because they're a 500 team right now, and winning should have a place. Winning should matter somewhat. So take your pick. I personally think Jaylen Brown should stay in the All-Star because he's played just slightly more games.
Whoa.
I know.
This is a take.
I know.
This is a take.
Yeah. I'm going to stand behind the Celtics should only have one All-Star. But that's just how it is.
Okay, so Tatum is the guy coming off. Bam is going on. I got to ask you, defense-wise, who do you rate higher, Tatum or Brown?
Ooh, that's interesting. If you had asked me this at the start of the year, I would say Tatum. I think what he was doing is a little bit slept on. I'm not picking on Jason Tatum because I don't think he's good. I'm saying that ever since he's had COVID, he has not looked like the same player. And he has not looked the same since, I don't think. He's still been incredible. It's just, we can go back to the conversation we had off the cuff that was on the pod a couple of weeks ago. But Brooklyn having 3 All-Stars, Boston having 2 All-Stars, I don't think that's fair. My next guy up would be Chris Middleton. The Bucks, should they get 2? I don't know. I don't know if that's fair. But Philly has 2. So it's just the idea that Philly, Boston, and Brooklyn make up for half the All-Star spots, or more than half, because there are only 12 spots. I don't think that's fair. I think somebody should get plucked right off of there.
Does KD's injury and replacement make you feel better about it, so that there's technically 13 All-Stars are being awarded in the East?
Yes. That does make me feel better, because the conversation that we had where I said Brooklyn shouldn't have 3, now KD's not playing. I get that. But Kyrie has been so good, and James Harden has been good, especially in the absences of Kyrie and KD in those games. They've earned those spots. It's just, it does bother me that, 3, 2, 2 of 13 All-Stars at this point, half of them are coming from 3 teams, especially, and this is, West versus East. I don't want to get into that conversation, but the idea that Utah couldn't have 3 All-Stars given how incredible they've played this season, I don't believe any team should have 3 then. If Utah doesn't, then no team should.
A real stickler for record. We talked about this last time. That's clear. That's something we disagree on, and I don't think we're close. I don't think we're close on it. So for the record, I think Tatum is a superior, not far superior, but I think he's a superior defender to Brown. I think especially in the Celtics scheme, he's very, very big and very, very important. Offensively, I still think he's that guy. I love Brown, though. You know how I feel about Brown. But if I were removing a Celtic, I would go with Brown. However, I'm not removing a Celtic. I am taking the replacement, and I'm just plucking him right off the team and inserting Bam Adebayo. There's a conversation for Chris Middleton. I do understand it, but I do think that there should be a representative of the Heat. Jimmy being back has been important, but he just doesn't have the reps or the games under his belt at this point. And Bam Adebayo was doing a lot to try and keep the Heat above water while he was out. And his defense is still underrated, I think. There was a spotlight on Bam's defense in the playoffs, but it's still there. When we're looking at how the Heat play, it's so determined by matchup in the playoffs especially. And then you just see Bam dominate his matchups over and over again, and it allows his presence to affect other matchups. And suddenly you see the Heat are winning games that it doesn't really make sense to win. But once you factor in how affecting Bam as a defender, as a facilitator, all those things, how affecting he is, things start to make a lot more sense. And Jimmy's part of that equation as well. But Bam, I think, is too good to be left off. Chris Middleton, I love his role on the Bucks. I just think it's a little bit shy of where Bam is. But I would put Middleton ahead of Sabonis as well. But there's only one spot. Bam is my guy. And I'm happy to leave 2 Celtics. And I know the Raptors don't get a guy, but the standings are strange this year. It's hard to look at who's a winning team and who's not. The Knicks are 4th. What the hell, right?
You're keeping me honest in having to pluck a guy off. In a vacuum, I would just say, take Sabonis off. He's not deserving. If we're talking record, then if I'm talking record, then why is Vooch on there, and why does he deserve to be on there? Because he does so much for the team, in my opinion. But
because you made a video.
Yeah, because I made a video. I committed to it. I backed away from the Colin Sexton thing. I did. But so, yeah. No, if you were telling me that you had to put a guy like Fred VanVleet, who has had some all-star numbers this year, that shooting performance earlier in the season, unreal, a 50-piece for a Raptor, I'd take Sabonis and Vooch off in favor of a Heat player and a Raptor player. And we haven't even talked about a guy like Trae Young, who the biggest shouts were, what does he have to do to make to make this game? I'm not interested in having that conversation. I think that Middleton Van Vliet, and a Heat player all rank above Trey. But yeah, if I had to, if I didn't make a video, yeah, Vooch, sorry, you're off. But I did. I'm sticking to my guns.
Well, that's what it is, right? Is that in these talks, for a borderline guy with upward momentum will surpass a borderline guy who's static. That's why Randall got in. Does Randall have a claim over, like, I think Randall is one of the weaker ones, but he has that upward momentum, finally putting it together. The Knicks are a huge team, lots of fans. There's, the optics of it makes sense. He's having an all-star season. And the optics have to be important. Why did DeMar DeRozan make an all-star team before Kyle Lowry? He was not better than Kyle Lowry, but he profiled as the star on the Raptors when they were that upstart team. So he was rewarded with it, that kind of stuff. And Vooch, you can be rewarded by coaches for that stasis, but fans, analysts typically like to reward the upward momentum, I think. So guys like Vooch,
Yep.
Chris Middleton, Simmons even, who is maybe the definition of stasis in the NBA since he came in as a rookie. And that's a joke. He's improved in a lot of ways, but
Absolutely.
it's tough. But Bam is my guy. Sabonis comes off. Sounds like you're going with the vaunted and wonderful.
No, you can't make me. I said what I said. Just go back and listen to it. I'm not saying it again.
Okay. Western All-Stars. I'll go first. Okay, so this one, I'll keep it pretty simple. I'll keep it easy. I'll be talking about him ad nauseum, at length, for the game of the week. And I know this will upset you somewhat, Evan, but I'm taking Donovan Mitchell off and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for what he is doing on the Oklahoma City Thunder. He is getting into the All-Star game for me.
I have absolutely no problem with that. So mine, real quick, is Mike Conley. Mike Conley. If you guys listen to the Low Post podcast, which if you're listening to this, you should, Kevin Arnovitz was on as a guest, and he talked about how he went into great detail about the many different things that Mike Conley does. And before he missed a few games, Mike Conley was the best player on the best team. Not the most important player, because obviously that's Rudy Gobert, but Mike Conley just does so many things for the Jazz. So for me, it's if I'm putting a guy in and I'm taking a guy off, it's Conley for Mitchell, but I can understand. Shai was my very next guy. 23.2 points per game, 50, 40, 80. And, he's in the 80th percentile for point guards in usage, and he's gigantic. 5.5 rebounds almost, 6.5 assists almost. He does so many things for the Thunder, who have been the biggest surprise of the season probably. So I think Shai is a very deserving All-Star.
Yeah, my case for Shai is that the offensive burden that sits on his shoulders is larger than most players have to deal with, and is larger than most any player on the Jazz. If Shai was dealing with a bunch of guys that the Jazz have on the roster, I don't know what it looks like. It's like a pointless hypothetical, but I do respect players who carry a heavy load. And teams like the Jazz, they're not the Hawks, but people are kind of reluctant to reward those larger than the sum of its parts teams, because when the players come apart, they see them as, not really all-star. Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, guys like that. And you have people like, Chuck picked Jordan Clarkson as an all-star over Anthony Davis. And that doesn't mean that Jordan Clarkson is an all-star, but he's having a very, very important year for the Jazz. Ingles, Royce O'Neal, Conley, Gobert, Bogdanovich, Mitchell. There's just a lot of guys doing a lot of good things. Favors, right? George Niang. They go deep. They've got a really good team. They can win with their bench. They can win with their starters. And people are more reluctant to reward those types of teams, I think, with individual accolades, because we have this perception of what an all-star is, and what I've been working with my whole life that's been informed somewhat with analytics and more eye tests and just working in the industry is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander fits more typically with what I think an all-star is than Mike Conley or Donovan Mitchell. Does that mean, like, I can't correct the wrongs that Mike Conley has been done? Mike Conley has been an all-star in other seasons, but this year I would give the edge to Shai, just to make sure that Shai doesn't end up like Mike without selections down the road.
Well, he's a guy I don't think we have to worry about, because come the 2030 season, when the Oklahoma City Thunder have 5 of the number 1 picks of the last 6 years, and Shai is still the best player among them, or the most consistent scorer, I don't think we'll have to worry about Shai not making any more All-Stars after this year. He's a deserving All-Star. The easiest remedy to all of this would to just give 3 more spots, because it doesn't make sense that it's a 12-man roster. An NBA team has 15 players, and it's not as if the All-Star game should not be played at all. But if you're just going to name All-Stars, that'd be cool. There's room for 3 more guys each way, and there will still be lots of engagement and lots of debate as to who should have made it over this so-and-so and so-and-so. And we haven't even hit on guys who, DeMar DeRozan. I think the Spurs are, right now they sit at 17-12. They are the only team in the West above 500 who don't have an all-star.
Probably the only team in the league then.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
And that is also the sum of its parts things. Although DeRozan profiles as a bigger cog in the Spurs offense than many of the Jazz, I think. But that is one of the things, is heliocentricity lends itself to all-star status a lot of the time. But then if you lose that momentum, like Trae Young did, and the optics were that the Hawks were supposed to take a leap this year. We talked about it in our preview. They were expected to progress meaningfully in several ways, and maybe not all at once, but at least some of them. And that just hasn't happened at the level that most people expected. So why reward Trae Young when he has a roster that's supposed to be significantly better, but even at the helm, he's still not commanding a team to wins? I think that's most of it. But DeMar, if record was above all else, you have to give DeMar DeRozan the all-star spot. He's clinical. He's fantastic. He's one of the best offensive operators in the league. The Spurs have one of the most interesting and enjoyable systems that they run with him in place. Shooters, cutters, complementary ball handlers. It's great. They move LaMarcus to the bench. They're trying things out over there, and they're a super enjoyable team. So if DeMar were able to get in, which he won't, I'd be fine with that. But yeah, at the end of it all, Shai for Donovan, that's my pick.
And I'm good with that. I'm completely fine with that. If we're being a stickler for record here, Zion has been unreal, but they're 14-19. So if I'm not going to take Zion off, I just want Mike Conley on. I don't care how it happens. Shai will be my guy sitting right outside, and then I just flip Conley and Mitchell. And to your point about the perception of what an all-star should be, there's a reason why I believe this has happened twice now, is the team with the best record in the East has sent 4 all-stars to the game. Atlanta did in their 60-win season. I think it was Korver, Horford, Millsap, Teague, and then the Detroit Pistons once upon a time. Everybody in that starting lineup except for Tayshaun Prince. The West is so brutal that they've never won. I'm not sure if the West has ever sent, or a team has ever sent 3 all-stars from the same team to the West all-star game. So I don't know. I agree with you. It's about optics, but
3, was Bynum ever an all-star?
Yes, he was 1 year.
Then they probably had 3 that year. They probably had
That's
Bynum, Gasol, and Kobe.
Apparently the Lakers did not. Andrew Bynum and Kobe made it in 2012, but Pau Gasol did not.
Wow. And Gasol made it in 2016 as a starter, didn't he?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
Pau Gasol is very deserving, but I think that was the year that he struggled with a few injuries. So, actually, he did not make it from 2012 to 2014.
Very underrated. And I don't think his legacy has the shine it deserves. Gasol is, wow. What he ahead of his time, perhaps. And
Easily.
antiquated parts of the game he was so good at, but still like the futurist in him, he was so good. It's a shame he doesn't get the shine he deserves. I think
Absolutely.
there's a case. Now this is going to be blasphemy. I think there's a case that he should have a finals MVP. I am a firm believer of that. So I'll put that out there. If anyone disagrees, that's okay. I'm happy to disagree.
I think another thing that doesn't get talked about as much is Kobe and LeBron in 2008 and 2012 respectively had the biggest moments of the gold medal game, but I went back and watched those games because of the Kobe videos I did for the Olympics. Pau Gasol was the very, very best player in each of those games. He was unstoppable. He was there was no containing him. When LeBron got in foul trouble, I think both games there was a worry in the sporting. If you're a fan of USA basketball, you were scared of what Spain was doing, and especially what Pau Gasol was doing in those games. Go back and watch those games if you can. He is the best player on the floor, and Kevin Durant, Jason Kidd, different Olympics, yes, but Chris Paul, LeBron, Kobe, Dwayne Wade in 2008, they're all on the floor, and Pau is better than every one of them, and he affected the game more than any one of them in those games. So, yeah.
Most impactful due to better utilization within the scheme, I would say. Gasol is brilliant player. Okay, game of the week. I'll go first since I am itching to talk about my game of the week. Canadians stand up. I got to tell you, 42 from my guy Shai, and a game-winning three-pointer from famous fire hydrant, Lou Dort. My son is also named Dort, okay? I'm telling you guys. This game was so much fun. Thunder, Spurs, last Wednesday. Unfortunately, the two most interesting aspects of the Spurs, DeMar DeRozan's wizardry and Keldon Johnson's dynamite exploding attacks to the rim, both absent from this game. DeMar and Keldon, neither of them played. So the Spurs jury-rigging a lot of the game. It's a blessing to watch Patty Mills just work with the craft that he has, because you might think in the NBA this year, Patty Mills pick and roll, that's not a team's go-to. But it is. And here's the thing. Until the very last play that the Spurs ran, which he screwed up on, he had a double dribble. He was killing it because of his ability to change speeds and leverage his jumper. Now, on the other side of things, Patty Mills changes speeds great. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander changes speeds at a level that I have not seen before. His staccato type of basketball and then ability to transition into smooth flowing music basketball, just oscillate between the two, is one of the rarest aesthetics I've ever seen in my life. Now that he's paired a step back three and spot up 3-point shooting with that, he's unconscionable. If you were watching basketball 10 years ago, it would be hard to think of or create in your mind a player who looks and plays like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's massive, truly massive at the guard position. He's got long linguini tentacles that allow him to get to the rim, finish over defenders, and step through. I talked about this on a recent episode, but he can pick up the ball anywhere within the three-point arc, and he can get to the bucket. He's got long strides, lithe, slippery, can finish with either hand, and he's crafty. Not only that, but when he's on ball, his collection of in and out dribbles, hang dribbles, step backs, just dribble packages mixed with his stop and start game. I think if a regular human being tried to go out there and guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he wouldn't even have to burst past you. He could just do his stop and start thing and rupture your quadricep muscles because of all the bracing you would have to do to guard him. All this to say, the Spurs, even with DeJounte Murray, who is an absolutely fantastic defender, even with him at the point of attack, they could not contain Shai. Shai unlocked everything for the Thunder in this game. He almost scored half their points. He was breaking down the defense and creating so many looks. He could be MVP someday. Now, that's not guaranteed. It's really hard to win MVP. Very few players do it. But he's going to be top 5 in an MVP conversation. He's going to be top 5 in the vote someday. Him and Jason Tatum both. Those are two guys I bet the farm on. De'Aaron Fox is getting close. But those are two young guys who I say they're going to be there, man. There's just so much in the game. The jump shot coming around, it's incredible. The things he picked up, the put the defender in jail that he didn't do with the Clippers as often, clearly developed while playing with Chris Paul, taking on one of the best point guards game, absorbing it into his own, and mixing it with the things that are so classically Shai, the shake, the wiggle, the tight handle, and the long finishes. He is a hell of a player. It's hard to overstate what he means for Canadian basketball and what he might be able to do if he plays for the national team. Just the Maple Jordan stuff that was attached to Wiggins, to Barrett. There's a little lithe kid coming out of Toronto, and he's the guy. Back into the lottery, he's the pick. Traded for another player because the team was chasing title hopes. And I love Paul George, but Shai is probably a year and a half away from surpassing PG. That's where we are. Shai is above and beyond. Now, I've said a lot of things all at once. I'll let you talk about Shai because I know you have thoughts on him, and then I'll get back to the game.
Yeah, he's so good. He's one of the guys who I like to, when I come up with a video, I don't necessarily like to do back-to-back seasons. I do, if I really enjoy their game, a Luka, a Steph, a Kyrie, sure, yeah, when they're just fun to watch like that. But Shai is one where there's so many different things this was last year before he made another leap. There's so many different things he does well that it's kind of hard for me to pair it move by move by move by move, because everything is it just all blends together. And even more so this year, some stats for you. Shai is, as a pick and roll ball handler, he ranks 93rd in the league, 1.144 points per possession. Unreal. He does so many things. He ranks in the 92nd percent in the league if you add up, possessions plus assists, points per possession, and he's how old is he?
He's 23.
That's mind-boggling. That is mind-boggling. He's per cleaning the glass, 22.6 years old. And he's playing as the point guard. He's not in this hybrid role or anything. He has the ball in his hands with an effective field goal percentage of 58. He'll make your brain hurt.
In this game, they played Shai in tandem with Theo Maledon. And Theo had an underwhelming game offensively because there just wasn't a lot of potency to his off-the-dribble stuff. He's a good passer. He was pretty good in passing lanes defensively. I actually liked his attentiveness on defense. I think that's why Maledon closed. I think that's why he played most of the minutes that he did. I liked it a lot. Hamidou Diallo, another guy to Hammy. He's a guy to keep a close eye on. I think there's a lot of things to like in his game. I said before the season started that Darius Baisley was a swing skill guy. Like I was waiting for his dribble to come around so that he can transport himself everywhere. I believe it's there. Involving Darius Baisley in sets, he took threes. He didn't make them. But involving him in sets, I think adds a danger, especially in dribble handoff stuff. He's very quick on the bounce. He can get to the bucket. And when he's moving through sets, either as a cutter or a screener, he's quick. He's diligent. He looks really nice in the framework of OKC's offense. But this game fundamentally came down to mostly Shai beating on the Spurs, who overloaded and eventually overloaded to the point where they left Lu Dort wide open for a three-pointer that he hit as time expired, and the Thunder win by 3. But to get to that point, yes, Lu Dort had 2 threes prior, one on a dribble handoff. Lu Dort, late in game, dribble handoff. Can you believe it? Three-pointer, cashing it. Unbelievable. But the two-man game of Al Horford, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, basically unlocks everything. Horford is so good at the rescreen and adjusting to all of Shai's improvisational whims. They play really well together. The dribble handoff stuff, giving him the ball on the elbows, running cuts off of him, and then just straight up screen and roll. So dangerous. Shai hit a ton of threes in the first half and then mostly was driving to the bucket in the second. That's how they broke down the Spurs. And the offense faltered when Shai was off the floor. They were super reliant on threes. They hit a few to sustain, but when Shai was on the floor, that's when the Thunder were going. When they weren't, they were bleeding points. And the Spurs, for their part, I think DeJounte Murray is going to be one of the best mid-range operators. He's already basically there, but he'll be one of the best mid-range operators for the next 10 years. He's so smooth in that action. The best mid-range shooters can typically feel on their shoulders. They have a sense of where the contest is coming. They always know where the guy in front of them, their feet is coming. Like they assess all of this stuff to get into their motion. DeJounte, really good at sensing how tight the defense is, if the pocket pass is opening up, or if his jumper is there. He got a lot of points that way. Just screen and roll with Pirtle, getting into his spots, hitting his jumpers, getting a little bit deeper if he could for a floater, or getting all the way to the bucket. And the Spurs, as I said at the start, they manufacture offense like few teams. There's like Keita Bates-Diop, who I like a lot, Trey Lyles. You're going to find guys like that spotting up for threes off of nice cuts or forming up off of drives. And you're like, oh, yeah, that guy. We can't leave the weak side completely unoccupied because these guys will make us pay from downtown. It's Lonnie Walker. He continues to attack space. He's not been super great this year. He's struggled to a certain degree, but continues to attack space. He's a guy brimming with potential that I love. And Patty Mills doing his thing. The big man, Pirtle, I think, Anthony Doyle, a colleague of mine at Raptors Republic who pays very close attention to Pirtle, likes his game a lot. He was saying that maybe he should be getting some Defensive Player of the Year consideration. Just in the conversation, Pirtle is a superb defender. And I know it's not all about Shai, but the fact that Shai was tearing up DeJounte Murray, Jakob Pirtle actions is pretty crazy to me and speaks to the guile, the craft, the intelligence, and the skill that Shai has. And that's basically what this game came down to for me. The Thunder were really dependent on the three-pointer. The Spurs were as well. There's breakdowns that happen in every game, but the two-man game of Horford and Shai, that's what won the game for the Thunder in this one. And Shai, basically, 42 points is no small thing, especially when you're facing at the point of attack DeJounte Murray and the drop defense of Jakob Pirtle. Masterful performance. I felt lucky to be able to just sit down and watch it, and I had a blast. Shai, just be ready for him to be in the MVP conversations. There is one last time. It's hard to have thought a player like him would come along and exist. The NBA is changing. That much is clear because Shai, the improvisational bent that is clearly existing in his game, so dominant with it. The three-point shot came along, and suddenly it's that herky jerk. And Luka, herky jerk. Control and herky jerk. Trae Young, herky jerk. And when De'Aaron Fox is at his best, he also has herky jerk to his game. LeBron has never had herky jerk. Giannis, KD, like a little bit. But the profile of a lot of the players who seem to be the next ones up, herky jerk. What an underrated skill. I mean, like amoebic players. And maybe that's why I'm still on the DeLon Wright bandwagon. But, man, Shai astounds me. I love him.
Listen, man, I talked about we did our preview pods before the season, and I found a way to talk about Shai benefiting from spending a year with Chris Paul. I don't remember which pods I did it, but I definitely brought it up more than once. And just the soaking up all of that knowledge, it never hurts you as a young player. Being around that type of basketball IQ can't hurt. And Shai has the benefit of having it happen again. This time with a pick and roll partner rather than somebody to learn from directly, like in his position. Al Horford has played with Kyrie Irving and the other Atlanta just as a whole, as a system. There's so much Al can, and two-time NCAA champion. Al can teach Shai so much. George Hill, nobody would have thought, I don't know, nobody, but just looking at the George Hill acquisition for the Thunder, does it do anything for them? On the court, I don't know, but it will do wonders for Shai. Like having veterans there to help guide your young guys through this, it accelerates their growth. It may not necessarily help them the season they're together, but the lessons you take away, you're eventually going to need those things if you want to be a true blue superstar and an MVP candidate. And we both think Shai will get there. And I think that's because he's also, credit to him too, he works incredibly hard and he's a sponge for basketball knowledge. So
there is, you get lucky too. Shai, if the Clippers knew Shai was this guy, maybe that trade probably doesn't happen. Honestly, it probably doesn't. They probably have to try and figure out some other way to make it work, or maybe Kawhi signs elsewhere, something else happens. Because if you know that this guy is only 2 years away, the length of Paul George's contract, along with all the other stuff you send, you probably don't make that deal. And you have to get lucky. The Thunder took that deal. They were expecting Shai to be good, obviously. But this level of player, when I watched Shai in his rookie year against the Lakers, I watched when he was very comfortable attacking a closeout, getting to 14 feet and hitting a bank shot, or getting all the way to the bucket, sparingly spending time on ball. He was mostly projected as a defender, a guy who's going to come in and defend his positions really well. Suddenly, you can just hand him the ball for however many possessions a game, and he's going to create. The event creation of Shai it's a lot. He's doing a lot all the time. And the Thunder, who have been putting together a roster just trying to assemble a bunch of different assets, got lucky because they took on the Chris Paul contract thinking, yes, Chris Paul is still good, maybe not worth his contract. That's what people thought. Now, is that true? I don't think so. Chris Paul is doing his damn thing. He's an all-star. But the Thunder took Chris Paul to get assets, and then they moved Chris Paul to get assets, and then they took George Hill to get assets. They might end up moving George Hill to get assets. But unwittingly, we're putting some of the smartest, most clever point guards in front of Shai to help develop while they're there. You have to get lucky because the Thunder very clearly have been after some horrible luck earlier on in this decade.
Yeah, and you have to look at it from when I finished his video from his rookie year. He had some highlights, yes. But I didn't watch the Clippers very much. I should have. Gallo, Tobias Harris, Lou, Trez, Bev, those guys. Yeah, maybe I should have watched them more. But the thing that made me want to go back and put together film of Shai was how he was unafraid in the playoffs. He went at Steph and Clay in that first round, and the Clippers were able to take 2 games off of, the Durant, Steph, Clay, Draymond Warriors, and that's no small feat. It's no small feat. And what he was doing in having to defend one of those 2 guys almost all the time when he was on the floor, and the positions he was being put in by Doc, who that's another guy who he probably benefited greatly from. Shai's coaches have probably talked to him about like, hey, I've coached guys like Tracy McGrady and Paul Pierce, et cetera, guys who have, you're not quite as tall as them, but you have every bit the ability to get in to the spaces that they could get into. Everything is breaking right for Shai, and it's being there, being presented the opportunity is half the battle, right? Because not everybody gets presented the opportunity, but he's making the most of he's made the most of every single opportunity he's ever been given. And, if he continues to do that going forward, yeah, MVP or top 5, top 3, whatever. Question for you, just, because my game of the week was, there's not a whole lot to talk about. I saw this. I don't know who the original poster was. Shout out to Anthony Doyle. Great follow on Twitter. He's the one who was responding to it. That's why I saw it. Would you, if you could go back and you know what you know now and everything plays out the same, is Shai number 2, number 3 in his draft? Luka was in that draft. Jaren Jackson, Trae Young, obviously Marvin Bagley. Everybody knew that was a mistake then by the Kings not to take Doncic, but where would you rank Shai if you were redrafting?
I'm taking Shai number 2. Here's the thing. Shai, I didn't talk about it because I was talking about his offense, because there's so much to talk about when Shai scores 42 points out of 102, and there's playmaking to go along with it. But his ability to connect as a point of attack defender and recover because of his length and his ability to navigate screens gives him a defensive upside that a guy like Trae Young does not have. Now, is Shai ever going to tip the scales and be as big an impact offensive player as Trae Young? Not likely, I don't think. But Shai presents the possibility, the potential of being a guy who not only can be a major plus offensively, but can be a plus defensively, and we'll see how much that aspect of his game grows going forward. He's an immense prospect at this point. He's developed in ways that basically nobody but the biggest believers in Shai saw coming. And I know there are really big Shai believers who had him since he got drafted, said this is going to be the guy. But I only have him behind Luka. And DeAndre Ayton, Jaren Jackson, Trae, they're all taking a seat behind Shai for me currently.
Yeah, I can respect that. Let's see, who else is, just a shout out to other guys from this draft. Mikal Bridges, Colin Sexton. Who we got? Mitchell Robinson, New York Knick, shining star. Mitchell Robinson. Duncan Robinson, undrafted. Our guy Yuta Watanabe, undrafted. And that's not even mentioning the low end guys like Dante DiVincenzo, Kevin Herter, Mo Wagner, these type of guys, Gary Trent Jr. These type of guys. That's not really good draft. Really good draft. Shake Milton. Yeah,
Big shout
really
out
good draft.
Shake.
But yeah, I would number 2 probably. Unless you told me today right now Trae Young is going to turn into a Steph Curry level off-ball machine. Yeah, probably. I'd probably take Shai.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Game of the week, sir. We've got the Lakers and we've got the Jazz. I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Oh boy. What can I say? This is the first time that both Marc Gasol and Mike Conley have taken the floor together since 2019. There's that. And besides that, this was the first game the Jazz had since All-Stars were announced, the All-Star reserves were announced, and Mike Conley came out on fire. He hit a three in the Jazz's first shot of the game, and then he stole the ball from an errant LeBron pass and laid it up the other end. He had, I think, 8 or 10 points in the first minute and a half. Mike Conley was determined. Besides that, there's no above the break threes. Shout out to PD Webb. It's his handle on Twitter. The Utah Jazz, 8 of 14 threes total in the first 14 minutes of the game. And then from then on, it was a blowout. It was a blowout by the Jazz. The story of the game was in the second quarter. Utah absolutely scintillated in that second quarter. They shot 4 of 5 at the rim, 2 of 3 from short mid-range, and 8 of 11 from behind the arc. All of them above the break threes, and no other shots anywhere else. It was 23-24 Utah at the beginning of the second, and it ended 63-47. And it was over after that. There was no coming back. The Lakers at that point, without Dennis Schroeder and Anthony Davis, dropped their 3rd straight, I believe, or 4th straight. I'm not sure. There's nothing they could do. And it's not as if it was one guy. It's Utah comes at you in waves, and they will bury you. There's nothing the Lakers could do. By comparison, the Lakers shot 6 for 25 on above the break threes and 2 for 8 on corner threes for the whole game. That's already less than what Utah shot in that second quarter. And that's as many makes as Utah had from 3 in that second quarter. There was nothing the Lakers could do. In a vacuum, if you told me LeBron had 19 points on 7 of 13 shooting in 30 minutes, in 28 minutes, I would say, oh yeah, they must have run away with it. No. There was no hope. And bounce scoring from everybody else. Donovan Mitchell, 4 for 16. Right, 4 for 16 for 13 points. He really didn't come uncorked. But what I really appreciate about Donovan Mitchell is his growth as a passer in the half court. He's doing more things. He had 8 assists this game. I think he could have gone hunting for his other 2 assists, but I don't believe Quinn Snyder played his starters in the 4th, or at least most of the 4th. Mike Conley also could have gone triple-double hunting. Like I said, he started out with 10 points early on. He finished with 14. But they didn't really need him. They just move that ball. They lead the league in passes, right? Rudy Gobert, 18 points, didn't block many shots. But they didn't even attempt free throws, hardly. Let me look up this stat right now. Oh, 10 for 15. 10 for 15 on free throws for the Jazz versus 13 for 20 for the Lakers. There's not a whole lot much else to talk about here besides that Jordan Clarkson, as Charles Barkley said, might be better than Anthony Davis, obviously. Anthony Davis in street clothes, Jordan Clarkson. No, so Jordan Clarkson is – everybody at this point, I feel, knows it. He's running away with Sixth Man of the Year award, and it's because, he's a heat pump. 18 points this game, 6 of 13, 4 for 10 from 3. My man was gunning. And this is what he's been doing all year. What is he averaging off the bench? Something 18 points per game. 18 points per game on 44.9, 37.1, a career high 96.4 from the line, shooting splits. Clarkson will do so many different things for you, and Royce O'Neal apparently is not the guy you want guarding the big wings, the Lukas, LeBrons, Kawhi, PGs of the world. But he did an admirable job this game guarding LeBron. Granted, no Anthony Davis, no Dennis Schroeder, so that meant that they could game plan for LeBron and LeBron exclusively. But Royce O'Neal, he does just enough of everything, for me anyway. He's evolving as a passer, and that's everybody on the Jazz, actually. Bojan and Royce, are they the two guys, and Joe Ingles, are they the two guys you want guarding the wings? They're not ideally, no, but if they can do enough of a job like they did this game, funneling LeBron into channels and then basically overloading the help and just throwing bodies after bodies at him after really playing him single coverage, but just trying to overwhelm him with help. That's a recipe for success for the Jazz. And there's a reason they've only lost at the time of this recording, 6 games, 7 games, 27-7. All right. Should we just sign off real quick? Just so we have the end.
Hey, due to some unforeseen technical difficulties, the podcast has decided to turn schizophrenic. As such, we have cut it short, and you've missed out on some insights from Evan regarding elevator plays and the like. The good news is we'll be back next week with less difficulties, ideally. I hope you enjoyed this one, but next week, no game of the week, not from either of us. We'll be talking about specific basketball minutia with PD Webb at Above the Break 3 on Twitter. And I think it'll be really good. I think he's one of the best people writing about basketball right now. That's what it is. Evan, if the internet is working, give a wave or something to sign off. And we're getting out of here, man. We're getting out of here. See ya.